been
I
good.
love that you're a girl dad too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I was gonna be a girl dad though.
Interesting. How?
Now my wife, she thought she was hoping for boys.
We always hope for the boys. We do.
She was hoping for boys. Girl, back to back.
Mm-hmm.
16 months apart.
Wow.
Yeah.
So y'all are busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
16 months apart. They're 8 and 7 now.
Nice.
And I just knew I was going to be a girl dad because most of my family is like, man, I would say 98% women. I have a big family and majority women. And so I've just always been very, much of a gentleman, very much protector mindset when it comes to women. And so I was just ready for that. Matter of fact, I was a sophomore in high school, and I had a dream that I was going to have a little girl that looked like me. So it just was, I don't know, maybe I was manifesting it.
Yeah, well, I love to hear that because I was having a conversation earlier with one of the guests just about representation when it comes to Black fathers, right, and in our community and what that looks like and what it should look like.
Now,
right?
my father was not present. My father wasn't present. Most of the men that I grew up around, my peers, our fathers weren't present. But I say I stole some identities. I would take a little bit of Richard Roundtree, Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, and then I would take a couple coaches that I was around, and then shout out to what I would call my godfather, my best friend's father, Artie Rogers. He really set the tone. He was very much like good times father. Old school, hardcore worker, very much hands-on. And, I always wondered if he was really intentional about the lessons he taught us.
Yeah.
Or was it just happened to be, walk past me, hey, sit up straight.
Right.
Hey, shoulders back.
Yeah.
Like, was he intentionally doing that? Or was that something that was just innately in him to see a boy that's around him and take it upon himself to correct whatever I was doing in the midst of it.
Right.
And so in my mind, and I say, I'm chasing after the ghosts of the educators that I never had, because between the community outreach stuff, between the mentorship, all that stuff, I'm just trying to be the role model that I never saw in my community. Another reason why, I just got off the plane, but I'm usually in suits. And so when I go into juvenile centers, when I'm in the community doing anything or in the classroom, I'm usually in a suit. And for me, it's a good representation. Now, I could do something casual. I could wear some J's. But I feel like wearing the suit is my superpower because I can wear the suit, and then when I open my mouth, I'm relatable and authentic. So anybody that I'm dealing with, like, oh, okay, you came from there.
Right.
Oh, you have this upbringing. You just not a brother in a suit with no type of relatability.
Yeah.
And I'm culturally competent. And I grew up around pimps and drug dealers. So me seeing a lot of stuff, I can relate.
Yeah.
So I feel like wearing a suit is my superpower.
Yeah.
You may have some type of outlook on me as soon as when I walk in, especially in a juvenile center setting. I'm like, oh, this brother's not gonna be able to relate to these kids. Then I open my mouth and automatically.
Yeah,
relate.
The relatability factor is there.
Yeah,
I like that. And I like that you mentioned good times, too, because I felt like that was like a great representation of a Black family, right? And that was on TV, right? And then it's interesting how much society has shifted culturally and like what our communities look like now versus what they could have maybe looked like had we continued to put those examples and keep that in mainstream media as opposed to what we kind of gravitate towards now.
Yeah, and I don't like to say that it's a lack of masculinity on TV and representation, but it is. It's a lack of masculinity. And, we can talk about toxic masculinity all day, but I don't really believe that it is toxic masculinity. I don't think it's a thing. I think what it is some men have grew up where they haven't understood emotional fluency. Emotional fluency is I'm going through an emotion and I understand how to relate to it. I understand how to use it. I understand how to cope with it in a positive manner. And we're missing that. And so instead of, blaming masculinity, I believe that it's men not understanding how to control their emotions. And you grow up, you're not taught that.
Right.
So who do you blame necessarily?
Yeah.
But it comes to a point where we're going to have some responsibility and accountability for my actions. I can't be 38 years old talking about how my father was not here for me, so now I'm doing such and such as a 30-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to switch that up.
Yeah, and take accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what advice would you give to folks who are kind of feeling that way, right? Like there's a lot of, Black men especially who may have like be suffering from abandonment and like things that have like hindered them. So what would you say to them?
Oh, therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean therapy. But the issue with therapy is a lot of Black men or men of color run away from therapy because it's really a colonized way of therapy. One, a lot of the time men don't like the therapy situation of one-on-one or the solo. Because think about it, we're actually more vulnerable and more open to talk about our feelings in group settings, i.e. the barbershop. And all of us are, especially people of color, we're spiritually connected. So understanding, we kind of naturally understand meditation. We kind of naturally understand prayer. All of us grew up in the church. Even if you're not in the church no more, we understand the concept.
Yeah.
And then just be able to tap into what relates to us as Black men. We're growing. We're being reared up in trauma. And so when you go to a therapist who can't relate to that at all, we come out. First thing we have to deal with is racism. And then on top of that, how do we deal when it comes to our environment? A lot of times our teachers, our mentors, or supposed to be our mentors, they don't look like us. They can't relate to us. And if we lash out in any type of way, we're either, they put us on the short bus, the special needs, or we're suspended. And as soon as we're suspended, it's usually a pipeline to prison. So with all of that, not being able to take in account of who's educating us and putting us in those situations, we lash out.
Yeah.
And then we never want to be in that position again, or we always steer away from it. So therapy is definitely out the question off the bat. We have to be open to it.
Yeah, you made a great point about even like the pipeline to prison, right? And I know that absentee fatherhood, especially in Black families, plays a big prominent role in that, right? Yeah. And I would say too that, I feel like we live in a society, and like I don't want to get super political, but like when you talk about the demasculating of men, especially Black men, right? And the quickest way to like just create demise in a culture and hold it back from procreating or moving forward is to create division in the family and remove like the staple, which is why the conversation that we're having at Mental Wealth Expo, I think, is so important, because the role of Black fathers is just so important and so key to like the lineage and what our future families look like.
Oh yeah, I mean, it has to be therapy, but we have to want to be accountability partners for each other, and to be able to be open with the next person next to us, because speaking from being a father, and no one showed me how to be one. Being a husband, no one showed me how to be one. So even when I'm going through something, I don't feel comfortable talking to my wife about it. And I don't feel comfortable talking to a white therapist about it. So if I can't have someone who looks like me, as in my peer, my brother, the brothers at the barbershop, then I don't have a way, I don't have any type of outlet. That means I can't vent.
Right.
Which, goes to my album called Pressure Cookers. Pressure cookers, you can cook up to 250 degrees. But at that 250 degrees, it's sustainable and it's functional, but it also can explode at 250 degrees.
Yeah.
So basically, just because you can do it doesn't mean that it's healthy, doesn't mean that it's good for you. And so we as men of color, we just operate, and we just operate as machines. And without and we operate, and we don't know that we're in the midst of PTSD. People around us die. People around us get murdered. We go through things, sexual trauma as well, and we just keep operating. Because if we vent to someone, or we start telling people our business, then we're seen as weak automatically, and we don't want to be seen as weak.
Yeah.
So we keep it bottled up.
Right.
That usually turns into violence. That usually turns into crime. That usually turns into us beating our spouse, or whatever have you. So without that outlet, without any type of outlet, it usually turns into what they would call toxic. Yep.
That's a very interesting perspective. And even when you bring up PTSD, like, so you served, right? You were of service, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about like some of those experiences while you were in service and like maybe some of the things that you saw.
Yeah, so when I was in the Army, 8 years, combat engineer. Actually, and the only time I was supposed to get deployed, I didn't get deployed because my youngest was being born. So I basically requested to get out of it, which ended up being a great decision because all of my battles, they said they were over there in the sand with nothing to do, and their money got messed up. But my experience as an educated black man, I went in with my master's degree, basically just trying to pay Sally Mae off because I was not super patriotic. That was not that was not the mission. But going in, and my biggest fear off top was, man, I'm going to get into it with some, and I live in Oklahoma, so all of my sergeants, all my superiors were white, super country Republicans who'd been serving since they were 17, 18. So all the rank that they had doesn't mean that they're great leaders. It's just they've been in long enough to continue to get rank.
Yeah.
And to be honest, in the Army, it's easy to get rank as long as you're passing your PT test. To be honest. So my experience, me serving through the Black Lives Matter era, I served from 2013 to 2019. That was hard as a black man. Looking at it like how maybe a black man would feel wearing a police officer uniform. That's how I was feeling. Anytime in that uniform, it was a mix between being appreciated by white people and then a black person looking at me like I'm the one throwing them on the car, putting them in handcuffs, and throwing their family in jail. So the duality of having to play that, like Du Bois talk about the duality of the Negro, like continuously having to deal with that has been something that I've just had to cope with. Always being in the corporate world, my background being in finance and corporate world, then switching over to being in the military, always having to play that duality. So if I'm frustrated with that, where do I take it out on? Usually, it's my spouse. Usually it's my kids. Usually it's me lashing out in the community. I guess maybe I can give it to my mother. She was always on me to set me straight. So, I give a lot to my mom because her being a boy mom, single mother, and a tribe of aunts.
Yeah.
A tribe of aunts who really stayed on me about what they wanted to see in a man and kind of molded me in certain ways. I think that kept me out of stuff. And also, doing the right thing was always easy for me. Being amongst gangs and all my uncles sold dope and just seeing everything like that, it was like if I don't do the right thing, I'm in jail.
Right.
If I don't do the right thing, I'm dead. So I'm just gonna do the right thing.
Right.
I mean, it was just easy for me. It just made sense. The other didn't make sense. So I didn't do much of it. Now, I was in some spaces I shouldn't have been. We all had those stories.
Of course.
And I made it out. God is good. But all in all, I was doing the right thing just because it made sense.
And because someone instilled that in you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To make those proper choices. Motherhood is such a multifaceted position.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that we take on everything in terms of, like, especially our sons. Right? So my son is 24, and it's like we're very close in that you're always like the one to make sure that you create that balance in their life, right? Yeah. And make sure that they're seeing things not just from this linear position, but like they're being well-rounded. So I love to hear that story about your mom, because I just feel like sometimes mothers don't always get the credit for all the different positions they have to play and like how that plays out in their children's lives.
Yeah, and my father actually died 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Appreciate it. But I was literally, I don't know, maybe around him a handful of times, and he lived 15 minutes away from me. And, he didn't know how to be a father as well. And he was a Rolling Stone. So I got 6 half brothers, and 1 sister. And the thing about it is when he passed, of course I went to the funeral and people were going up saying the remarks. And at first I wasn't going to get up.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to regret not getting up.
Mm.
So when I got up and spoke on his behalf, it was more of me just being real.
Yeah.
He wasn't in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The times he came to my graduations, like every single graduation. And so that was maybe a way for him, to reach out.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
And so me as an adult now, I've never had any malice against him. And I think because my mom did such a great job.
Did a great job, yeah.
That I never felt like I was missing out on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the mindset that, well, I can't miss what I don't know. And so I never had that feeling of, oh man, why my dad was never around. I never.
And you didn't use that as an excuse.
Yeah,
right.
And I just never felt that
Mm-hmm.
that way about him. So when I did my remarks, I was basically speaking directly to how, as a grown man, I see that we're a little alike. People always say that he had a smile for everyone. He was really into working out, which is funny. I guess he had a little bit of eczema. So I remember as a young kid, he only used Vaseline,
mm-hmm.
and I only use Vaseline.
Mm-hmm.
So just see, and he loved fried chicken, and hey, I love fried chicken.
So you got all the things: the smile, the fried chicken, and the Vaseline,
and him loving to work out, and just putting all those together. I'm like, I could see that I got some things from my father,
mm-hmm.
and I'm just not mad. Well, I got his arthritis too,
Oh.
but I've never been mad at him, so I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't leave that funeral without saying some things about him.
Yeah.
So I don't have any malice to him, but I think that's a credit to how well that my mother raised me.
Yeah, that's very admirable, because I think some people just stay in a very bitter space when they feel like they're owed something or
Plus, I just feel like I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
if I was, and I wasn't mad as a kid, so if I wasn't mad about it as a kid, I damn sure can't be mad at it.
But that's because someone did a good job in terms of like showing you your self-worth with other things, right? I felt a little different about my father. I wasn't angry, but I definitely felt like there was a part of me that like I was missing until I got older, and I was like, well, that doesn't constitute who I am as a person, right?
Yeah.
So I think everybody, depending on like your life experience, like takes it a little differently. I also believe, and we were having this conversation earlier with a previous guest, that people can give you what they don't have, right? So maybe there were some negative things or traits that I would have maybe picked up on. Yeah. Maybe I wouldn't be who I am had I been influenced by him. I mean, he's a good human, but it's you just don't know. You just don't know.
You just don't know. You just don't. But at the same time, it's like, where would I be if the Lord didn't put those pounds of pressure on me?
Mm-hmm.
I might be a totally different person,
Totally.
like you said.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I think I had a little bit of selfishness, just not being open to, or maybe not really being open, but I didn't make the time to go see him.
Mm-hmm.
Later on in his life, his arthritis really got to him, and he had a lot of surgeries. So he was bedridden for probably maybe the last 3 years of his life. And I didn't make the time. My big brother, shout out to Vic, he would tell me all the time, my oldest brother was more like a father figure. We kind of found each other when I was about 8 and he was a teenager, and he kind of took me under his wing. So my oldest brother has always kind of been a father figure for me. But I didn't think about bringing my little girls around my father. I just didn't think about it. And my big brother would say, hey man, you got to make that time, whatever. And I'm just like, all right, sure. But I wouldn't ever make the time. And then one day, my daughter asked me, because my father-in-law is very active with the girls, but she asked me, Daddy, do you have a daddy? And I was like, ooh, that hit me. Because I never thought to create or make sure that relationship was there for them. Right. I just never thought about it. And my youngest, Camila, she said, she asked, do you have a daddy? And I said, yeah, I do have a daddy. Well, where is he? And I said, he lives like 10 minutes away. And she said, well, I think we need to meet him. And I was like, oh, wow.
Right.
So that gave me some perspective on just having an open mind to trying to make that time, because I never would have thought about it. If she never asked, I never would have.
Yeah.
So on his birthday last year, I took him out there to see him. And they were just so warm about it. Even him being bedridden, like they were just so warm about it, because it's like, man, this is our dad's dad. Yeah. So them putting that into perspective and making that connection, they're really big about like understanding family tree and family dynamic right now.
And that's so important. Yeah. Even to this, like platform in particular, one of the reasons why we built this is because obviously there's a lot of issues that come along with our community around like Black maternal health and all these other things. When we have a healthy family structure, right, like it lends itself back to us being able to thrive and heal.
Oh yeah.
And so that's really super important and key to like how we move forward as a community. And and it's just so interesting to hear like your story and like how fatherhood, even though like you weren't given specific tools for it,
right,
and like learned, right,
yeah,
like you just know so much and you've done a good job, right?
right,
So yeah,
right. No, and looking back on it, it feels just really good that I was able to make the decisions and the moves, and find the success that I have, without that.
yeah, yep.
Like you said, I was able to create my own tool bag.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I was stealing from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my closest uncles, he sold drugs when I was young. He was like no exaggeration, he was like Nino Brown
Mm-hmm.
in Oklahoma, and him, he was very family oriented though. So that's what I took from him.
Yeah.
I have an uncle, man, no shade to him, but he's really educated.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't around for
Mm-hmm.
family like that. I would
Mm-hmm.
only see him, you know, but he's very educated. I took that from him.
Yeah.
And so just being able to take different things from people, I mean, I even use that as advice now.
Mm-hmm.
I can listen to some advice, even if it's unsolicited.
Yeah.
I'd rather not get unsolicited advice,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm open to taking what I need
Right.
and leaving the rest.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. That's great.
and that's what I kind of did, picking up on things and masculine traits growing
Mm-hmm.
up.
And it's all how you take certain things and you move them around the board.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And you make it work. Right.
yeah.
So I love that analogy. So tell me a little bit more about your music and
Okay.
like how it's tied into entrepreneurship for you, and like what does that look like, kind of bottled up in
Yeah.
future for what you want to do or what you're doing.
Okay. Well, shout out to CL McCoy. He's a charted, just music entrepreneur, genius, teacher as well, based out of Oklahoma, and he's Grammy nominated as well. And basically, my mindset around it was I love music, I love hip hop, but I'm not a rapper, not at all. I'm not a singer, even though in some of my performances I try to harmonize a little bit, get my Kendrick J. Cole on, but it sounds terrible. But but my mindset around it was I want to do poetry albums. When I put my book out, honestly, I know everybody don't read, so I wanted to do something like it escapes me, like
like an audio experience.
An audio experience. But I wanted music to it. I wanted live instrumentation. I wanted people that could. I wanted real MCs on there, and I wanted vocalists, like very talented vocalists, and that's what I got. So I did my first one in 2001, and it was real short, about 6 tracks. I enjoyed the process. I fell in love with being in the studio, and so I was like, I want to do something else, but I didn't have a concept for it yet.
Yeah.
And so I was on a podcast. Shout out to Modern Manhood, Dr. Donnell Cole, Dr. Damon Williams in Oklahoma City, and we were talking about fatherhood, and one of them said something about a pressure cooker. They said something about what happens to a pot when it's boiling over and it's not able to release the steam. It boils over, explodes. Then I went back and was like, oh, it's like a pressure cooker. And like instantly it gave me the inspiration to put it together.
Yeah.
And so each track has, and shout out to Jasmine Sullivan, the hotels gave me kind of inspiration on how to format it. So on going into each track, it's a man, one of my dear friends, on there talking about their experience. Either I have a brother on there talking about his experience as being Black and part of the LGBTQIA community. I have another brother who served in the military, in the Navy. He talks about his experience being Black in the Navy. I have a Black entrepreneur on there, a full-time entrepreneur. I have my big brother Vic on there talking about what it's like to be Black and in corporate America. And all of these stream right into the next track. And each track has all original instrumentation on it. with some dope vocalists and some dope MCs.
That's awesome.
And I released it. In July and just been pushing it ever since. I got Apple charted a few weeks ago.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. And my whole mentality around it was I want to be able to give truth, but some relatable truth for Black men, but also give some truth and authenticity so women can listen to it as well and understand some of the things you're asking about men. It's on there.
That's great.
We talk about it on there.
Spoken word?
Yes.
So can you give us a little something off the album?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd rather give you something that I don't spit all the time.
Okay.
But let me see. Something that's So this one specifically is talking about. Well, you'll see. Lately, I've been going to a dissectologist. I mean therapist. My therapist says that I lack certain spatial reasoning. In that, I keep forcing to fit pieces into places that don't belong. Too accustomed to scarred tissue sounds like I'm bragging about being damaged goods. Being born Black is assembly required, instructions not included. Black eye, then broken sometimes more feel. No. Take this off. That goes here. Put this piece back. Oh. Sometimes I feel more broken than Black. Never taught how to share, can't build, play well, or let go of pain, so we claim blocks, lay bricks, and stack bodies like it's a game. Any, many, miny, no safe space or safe place. We're it right off the porch. Dodge, bullets with no name. I held Chris until the cops came while his blood was soaking me. A decade later, them same bloody clothes are under my bed for keepsake. They're a Nazi spider. The outside needed the inside to come together out the blue. It took a whole lot of work to end up so terribly unfinished, ugly, and yet so beautiful. The Black Jigsaw. And that talks about me finally going to therapy. Being able to go to therapy and sit down and talk to a young Black guy. He's a Omega out of Oklahoma. And I was able to talk to him and just talk about my experience. Talk about really, you just start going and you just understand you just need somebody to vent to. Now, yes, you're getting some professional feedback. You might end up getting some mechanisms to help you cope. But at the same time, you just find out that you just really needed someone to talk to.
Right.
Without any type of judgment. You know, we talk about safe spaces. Black men don't know anything about safe spaces. Excuse me. And when it comes to, because a lot of times, you know, just be totally honest, if we feel like a safe space and we vent to a woman, a lot of times it's going to be weaponized against us.
That could happen.
Nine times out of 10, it's going to be weaponized against us. And, you know, I throw 9 times out of 10 and people are like, oh, no, you're generalizing too much. I'm like, I don't know. I've been in a lot of circles, a lot of men's circles where let's say it's 15 of us and let's say 12 of us are married. Between the married men and the single men, all of us have the same testimony. And so if all of us have the same testimony, or damn near 14 out of 15 of us have the same testimony, and all of us not married, all of us not single, then it has to be something that's substantial in what we're saying. We don't feel like we can vent. We don't feel like we can say what's really on our mind. We don't feel like we can say that we have anxiety or we're having some insecurities or doubts, you know, about our ability to even leave the house, leave the house, you know. And so if those doubts are there, how are you going to weaponize that against us eventually? So, and if that's the case, I'm never going to tell you. Again, I'm going to keep it bottled up.
Got it.
Again, now you're dealing with another pressure cooker. You know, and that's not even speaking directly to what I'm dealing with at the job and how I'm seen in the community or how I'm seen on my job, and then having to take that depression, because a lot of us are going through depression and don't know that we're going through depression. You know, me myself, when I was in corporate America, I was depressed and didn't know it. Like I said, I was just functioning until I think I just realized that I wasn't doing any of the things that I really enjoyed anymore. I was going to work and coming home. And I didn't even want to go work out. I didn't even want to go do whatever. And I actually Googled it. I Googled characteristics of depression.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, damn, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
Being in this space every day and I'm not seeing any gratification. I'm feeling like I'm wasting my talents, wasting my gifts, and wasting my time. And when you talk about time, you can't get that back.
Yeah.
What they say, it's the only thing you can waste, but doesn't cost a thing, but it's expensive as hell.
Very, very high commodity time.
Yeah.
For sure. So to close us out, what advice would you give to Black men, or even men in general, who may be listening to this, right? Or maybe there's a woman that's listening to this who knows somebody who needs help, right? What advice would you give to them to kind of get off the fence and like take that step towards therapy and getting some resources?
Well, if you think someone needs it, the first thing would have to be, have you made yourself available to that person? Not just, and to be reliable, not just open your mouth and say, hey, I think you need to go to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but being open to listening, and listening to be listening and not listening to rebuttal.
Mm-hmm.
Having an open mind for that will start to create a safe space for that person where they'll be open to eventually going to therapy. Because like I said, men of color run away from it because of all the stigmas around it. So we're not just going to jump in. Most of us are not going to just jump in and be like, yeah, I'm down for therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you think that person needs it, you being a safe space for that person initially is always a good starter.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So where can people contact you and connect with you?
Yes. So Instagram, follow me. I'm trying to get my followers up. I'm posting damn near every day, so I'm trying to be engaging.
There you go.
But that's Mac, MAC
Mm-hmm.
_ since 1985. Since SINCE 1985 on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm active on those too. You can find me at CORDNEY, no U or T in my name, Cordney, McClain, MCCLAIN, and you can find me everywhere on Macwoods Inc with INK.com. I have my own website, and you can see updated footage, updated live performances, and then everything about my album.
Awesome. Well, this was very insightful and helpful.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you for coming, and hopefully you'll come back.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little taste of New York. The traffic is crazy, but but I'm a city architecture guy.
Okay.
So I'm just loving the buildings and everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming here today.
Thank you.
And you'll come back and visit us soon, hopefully. And until next time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Holla at me.